The war had raged on for years, with no end in sight. The galaxy was full of turmoil, and many planets fought for control. Aldora, a planet known for its ancient history and proud people, was one of the last remaining peaceful places. But peace was slipping away fast. Ethan, a human soldier from Earth, stood at the edge of a massive battlefield. The sky was dark, filled with smoke and the hum of flying ships. He gripped his rifle tightly, scanning the horizon. His mission was clear: protect the royal family of Aldora, the royal palace. Once a shining beacon of hope, now lay in ruins. The Aldoran people, who had trusted their leaders, were struggling to hold on. Ethan's team, a small group of elite soldiers, had been sent to assist in their defense. But they were too few, and the enemy was far too powerful. Ethan's heart raced as he ran alongside his fellow soldiers. The sound of explosions echoed through the air, and the ground beneath him trembled. The battle was fierce, and it wasn't. Long before they reached the palace gates, inside, the royal family had already been moved to safety. Ethan had one job left: protect Princess Myra. She was the future of Aldora, and her life was the last hope for her people. Without her, the Aldoran resistance would be crushed. As he reached the royal chambers, Ethan saw her. Princess Myra lay, unconscious, her breathing shallow and weak. Her royal robes were torn, and her pale face was covered in blood. The medics had already done what they could, but they were no match for the severity of her injuries. One of the medics looked at Ethan, his face grim. "She needs blood. Our medical technology can't help her without it." Ethan's eyes widened. "What do you mean, blood?" "She's not human, I know," the medic replied. "But she's the last of her bloodline. If she dies, Aldora dies. If you can give her your blood, we might be able to save her." Without a second thought, Ethan made his decision. He had no hesitation. He knew the risks. They were enemies by biology. But in this moment, he was a soldier, and soldiers protect their allies. He sat beside Myra and rolled up his sleeve. The medic connected a small device to his arm. Ethan's blood began to flow into the princess's body. For a moment, he felt lightheaded, but he didn't let it stop him. His entire focus was on her. Slowly, Myra's body seemed to react. Her color began to return, and her breathing deepened. The medics watched in disbelief. It was working, but it was also a gamble. Ethan wasn't sure if it was the blood transfusion or something else that had caused it to work. But he knew he couldn't stop now. He continued to give his blood, each drop a prayer for her survival. Her body began to heal, her wounds closing, her skin regaining its warmth. Ethan watched in amazement, his breath steadying as the impossible happened. Moments later, Myra's eyes fluttered open. At first, they were confused. But then they locked onto Ethan's. She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. Ethan didn't know what to say. He was just doing his job. "I did what I had to do." But Myra wasn't so sure. She could feel something different. Something had changed in her, something connected to him. Her pulse raced, but not from the injury. There was something inside her, something she couldn't explain. The medics stepped back, allowing them both a moment. The room fell silent except for the faint sound of distant explosions. The war outside continued, but here, in this moment, time seemed to slow. "Thank you," Myra said again, her voice more confident now. "I owe you my life, human." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it for that. I did it to make sure Aldora has a future. You were that future." But even as he said it, he couldn't help but wonder what had just happened. Could a human's blood truly save an alien princess? And what did it mean for the future of their people? The galaxy was full of mysteries, and this was just the beginning. Myra's hand, still trembling, reached for his. "I don't know what will happen now, but I will make sure your sacrifice isn't forgotten." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. He didn't need a reward or recognition. He only wanted to make sure she was safe. But as he looked into her eyes, he knew that this was far from over. The bond between them, no matter how strange, had just begun. Outside, the sounds of battle raged louder. But for a moment, Ethan and Mira shared a quiet, unspoken understanding. They were no longer just a soldier and a princess. Their fates had intertwined in a way neither could have predicted. As the minutes passed, Mira's strength continued to return, and so did the pressure of the war. Ethan knew that, despite her recovery, the real fight was just beginning. He had saved her life, but what would come next might change everything. As the days passed, Princess Mira's recovery continued. Her strength returned slowly, and with each passing hour, she seemed more and more like the powerful leader she had once been. The royal chambers, once filled with quiet tension, were now filled with hope. Myra's people began to whisper about the miracle that had saved their princess. But the whispers were not just about her recovery. They also spoke of the human warrior who had given his blood for her. Ethan had stayed by her side, keeping his distance but watching over her. He didn't expect any special attention, but the bond that had formed between them in the chaos of battle was undeniable. He had always been a soldier, trained to follow orders and protect his comrades. But now, something had changed. He wasn't sure if it was the act of saving her life or something more, but every time he saw her, his heart skipped a beat. Mira noticed it too. She had never been one to allow emotions to guide her actions, but there was something about Ethan that felt different. She had heard of human warriors and their bravery. But what Ethan had done, sacrificing his blood without hesitation, was beyond anything she had expected. It was rare for someone to act with such selflessness, especially in the heat of battle. As the days went by, Ethan found himself spending more time with her, talking about their different worlds. Mira shared stories of Aldora's history, its great cities, and its ancient traditions. Ethan, in turn, spoke of Earth, its bustling cities, and the quiet beauty of the forests and mountains.
Ow.
Though their worlds were different, they found common ground in the things that made them human, or, in Myra's case, something close to it. Their conversations often stretched late into the night, and Ethan began to notice the change in her eyes. What had started as a look of confusion and gratitude had now turned into something else. There was respect there, but also curiosity. She wanted to understand him, to know more about the person who had saved her life. One evening, as the sun set over the ruined palace, Mira asked Ethan a question that had been on her mind for days. "Why did you do it?" she asked quietly, her voice soft in the still air. Ethan looked at her, surprised by the question. "Do what?" "Give me your blood," she replied, her gaze steady but filled with curiosity. "You didn't know me. You didn't know me anything. Why would you risk your life for a stranger?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "Because it was the right thing to do. My people back on Earth are taught to protect others. We're soldiers, but we also believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. I saw you there. I knew I had to do something. It wasn't just about you being a princess. It was about helping someone who needed it. It didn't matter who they were."
Iris.
Eyes softened as she listened. The words seemed simple, but they carried weight. Ethan's honesty struck a chord within her. For the first time since her recovery began, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. In her world, she had always been told that strength was what mattered most. But here was Ethan, a human warrior who had given so much without asking for anything in return. His actions were not driven by power or politics, but by a sense of duty and compassion. It was something Mira had never experienced before. It made her question everything she thought she knew about the universe. "What happens now?" Mira asked, breaking the silence. "The war is still raging outside. My people are in danger. What will we do?" Ethan looked out the window, his gaze distant. "We fight," he said simply. "We fight for what matters. Protect the people who can't protect themselves. That's what soldiers do. That's what I do." Mira studied him for a moment, her thoughts racing. She knew that the enemy would not stop until they had taken everything from Aldora. Her people were strong, but they couldn't face this enemy alone. She turned back to Ethan, her resolve hardening. "You're right," she said. "It won't be enough just to fight. We need to unite our people. We need to give them hope. Ethan nodded. He had seen it many times before, fought for more than just land or power. The true battle was always for the hearts and minds of the people. If they could rally the Aldorans, unite them in their cause, they might have a chance. Mira stood, up slowly, her strength growing by the day. "I'll call for a council meeting," she said, her voice firm. "It's time we made our stand. The future of Aldora depends on it." Ethan watched her as she moved with grace, her every step a reminder of the weight she carried as the leader of her people. He had never expected to be in this position. But now, with Mira's strength and leadership, he realized that this was bigger than just one battle. But this was a turning point for the entire galaxy. As the council convened, Mira's message was clear: Aldora would not fall without a fight. Ethan, though still an outsider, would stand with them. He had given his blood to save the princess, but now he had a greater responsibility. He had given his heart too. The room was filled with Aldoran leaders, each one seated with their arms crossed, their expressions wary. They had all heard the rumors, and none of them were sure what to make of the human warrior who had saved their princess. But as Mira spoke, her words carried the weight of authority and the promise of hope. "This war will not break us," she declared. "We will fight, and we will win. It's not just for Aldora, but for the galaxy, for peace." Ethan stood by her side, his presence a silent testament to the strength that lay between them. The bond that had formed through sacrifice and trust was undeniable, and as the council listened, they knew that the future of Aldora was now in the hands of both a princess and a human warrior. As the meeting concluded, Ethan and Mira exchanged a quiet glance. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready. Together, they would face the challenges that lay ahead. Together, they would protect Aldora and each other. The days after the council meeting were filled with urgency. Aldora was preparing for war, but there was an air of uncertainty. Mira and Ethan worked together, each taking on their role to strengthen the planet's defenses. Mira, as the princess, was a natural leader, and Ethan, a seasoned soldier, became a valuable ally to her. Their bond deepened with every passing hour. But there was still something about Mira's recovery that neither of them could fully explain. Ethan had noticed. At first, it wasn't just the way Mira's wounds healed so quickly, or how her energy seemed to surge every time he was near. Something else. Something that felt ... different. As the days went by, he began to experience strange dreams. In them, he would see Myra in her chambers, but it wasn't the Myra he knew. The one in his dreams had glowing eyes, and her presence seemed to radiate power. He couldn't shake the feeling that their connection was growing stronger. But he had no idea why. Myra, too, felt the change. At first it was subtle, an unusual warmth that filled her whenever Ethan was around. Then it started happening more. Frequently, she would hear his voice in her mind when he wasn't there. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could feel his emotions as if they were her own. It was confusing, and at first she thought it might be a side effect of the blood transfusion. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that something much bigger was at play. One evening, after a long day of strategy meetings, and preparing the city's defenses, Mira asked Ethan to meet her in the royal gardens. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a soft glow over the flowers and trees. It was quiet here, away from the bustle of the palace. Mira had always found peace in the gardens, but tonight there was an edge of unease in her. Ethan arrived shortly. After, his footsteps soft on the gravel path, he saw her standing near a fountain, looking out at the stars. Her back was to him, but he could sense that something was troubling her. "Princess," Ethan called gently. Mira turned to face him, her expression serious. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady, but carrying a hint of something more. "There's something I need to tell you. It's about what happened when you gave me your blood." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Mira took a deep breath, the weight of her words pressing down on her. "When you saved me, something inside me ... changed. I thought it was just a side effect of the transfusion, but now I realize it's more than that." Ethan frowned. "What are you saying?" "I've been feeling it for days now," Mira continued. "Something connected to you. First it was just a sensation, but now I can hear your thoughts sometimes. I can feel your emotions. And it's not just that. There's something inside me, something that's waking up.
I think
It has to do with the blood you gave me. Ethan's heart raced. He had suspected something was different, but hearing Mira say it out loud made it real. He stepped closer to her, his concern growing. Are you sure? I mean, I've felt ... strange too. Sometimes when I'm near you, it's like I can sense. What you're feeling, it's like our connection is deeper than it should be. Mira nodded, her gaze intense. I don't understand it, Ethan, but I think the prophecy, it's real. My people have always spoken of a prophecy, one that says a warrior will come from another world, and through his blood, a power will be awakened within me, a power that could change the fate of Aldora. I didn't believe it at first, but now I'm starting to think it might be true. Ethan felt the ground shift beneath his feet. A prophecy. It sounded too strange to be real. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the impossible had already been happening. Mira had survived, and now they shared a bond that neither of them could explain. Perhaps the prophecy wasn't as far-fetched as he had once thought. What kind of power are we talking about? Ethan asked cautiously. Mira hesitated, her eyes searching his face. I don't know, but I've heard stories. Some say it could give me the strength to protect my people, to lead them to victory. Others say it could give me the ability to reshape the future of the galaxy itself. But the truth is, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse. It could be dangerous. Ethan took a step closer, his voice soft but determined. I don't care about the power, Mira. I care about you. If this power can help Aldora, then we'll figure it out together. We've already survived the worst, haven't we? Mira smiled, her eyes warm as she met his gaze. Yes, we have. But this is something different. I feel it in my blood, Ethan. It's growing stronger every day. Ethan reached out, his hand gently resting on hers. Right. Then we'll face it together. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The stars above seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for the next step in their journey. Mira's heart beat in time with Ethan's, their connection stronger than ever. She knew that whatever happened next, she wouldn't have to face it alone. As they stood there, a sudden noise broke the silence. In the distance, the unmistakable sound of enemy ships approaching echoed through the night air. The war was far from over, and the challenges they faced were only just beginning. But Mira and Ethan knew one thing for certain. The bond between them was unbreakable, and together, they would face whatever came their way. The days that followed Mira's revelation were filled with uncertainty and mounting tension. The war outside the palace walls continued to rage, and despite the growing bond between Ethan and Mira, there was little time for peace. They had to prepare for the inevitable conflict that was fast approaching. Mira spent most of her time with the council, organizing the Alderaan defenses. Ethan, ever the soldier, was at her side, offering his expertise on strategy and tactics. He could see that Mira was becoming more and more focused, determined to protect her people at all costs. But there was something different about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As the days passed, Mira's powers began to grow. It started with small things, glimpses of visions when she was alone. Strange sensations that ran through her body when she was near Ethan at first. She had dismissed it, thinking it was just a side effect of the blood transfusion, but it soon became clear that it was more than that. One evening, as the two of them sat in her chambers, planning the next phase of the defense, Mira suddenly gasped. She gripped the edge of the table, her fingers trembling. Mira, Ethan said, his voice filled with concern. He reached out, placing a hand on her arm. What's wrong? Mira closed her eyes, her breathing shallow. It's happening again, she whispered. I can feel it ... inside me. Ethan's heart raced. He had seen Mira experience these strange moments before, but this was different. This time, it seemed as though the power within her was becoming uncontrollable. The bond between them was stronger than ever, and now, it appeared that the prophecy was beginning to manifest in ways neither of them had anticipated. Mira opened her eyes slowly, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of fear in them. "Can't control it," she said, her voice shaky. "The power, it's too much. It's growing faster than I can handle." Ethan stepped closer to her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "Mira, we'll figure this out together. You don't have to face this alone." For a moment, Mira looked at him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. She had always been strong, always carried the weight of her people's hopes and dreams. But now, with this power inside her, she felt like she was losing control. Suddenly, the air around them seemed to shift. A strange energy filled the room, and Mira felt her body pulse with it. She looked down at her hands, watching as a faint glow surrounded her fingers. The glow grew brighter, and she gasped as a surge of power coursed through her. Ethan stepped back, his eyes wide with shock. "Mira, what's happening?" The energy continued to build, swirling around Mira like a storm. She could feel it, an overwhelming force that seemed to come from within and without. It wasn't just the blood transfusion anymore. This was something else, something ancient, something tied to the very core of her being. I can't stop it." Mira cried out, her voice breaking as the power surged again, this time causing the room to tremble. The furniture around them shook, and the walls seemed to vibrate with energy. Ethan moved quickly, reaching out to steady her. "Mira, listen to me. You need to focus. You have control over this. It's part of you, and you can tame it." Myra's breathing was rapid, her chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, her voice full of fear. "This power, ... it feels like it's going to destroy everything." Ethan held her steady, looking into her eyes. "You've already shown me your strength. This power, this gift, it's a part of you. You just need to trust yourself." Mira took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling within her. The energy was still there, swirling around her, but now, instead of fearing it, she tried to listen to it. She focused on the connection she shared with Ethan, the bond that had been forged between them since that fateful moment when he gave his blood to save her. Slowly, the power began to settle. The glow around her hands faded, and the air in the room returned to normal. Mira opened her eyes and looked at Ethan, her face pale but determined. "I did it," she said softly. I controlled it." Ethan smiled, relief flooding his chest. "I knew you could." Mira looked at him, a sense of awe in her eyes. "I don't understand all of it yet, but I think this power is meant for something greater than just me. It's for Aldora, for my people." Ethan nodded. "And I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." But just as the two of them began to feel a sense of calm, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the palace. The sound of it echoed through the halls, warning them of an incoming threat. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "They're here," he said, his voice grim. Myra stood up quickly, her body still slightly shaky from the surge of power. "It's time," she said, her voice firm. "We've been preparing for this moment, and now it's here. Aldora will not fall." The two of them hurried out of the chamber, joining the rest of the council as they prepared to face the enemy. The power Myra had just unlocked would not only protect Aldora yet, would be the key to their survival. As they made their way to the war room, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the battle ahead would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. The power within Mira was just the beginning, and together they would have to face the consequences of the prophesied, the enemies who sought to destroy them. The war had arrived at Aldora's doorstep. The enemy fleet, a force led by the ruthless warlord Verak, descended upon the planet like a storm, with ships that seemed to blot out the sun. The peaceful sky, once a symbol of Aldora's hope, was now filled with the dark shapes of warships. The countdown to battle had begun. Mira stood in the war room, her gaze fixed on the large holographic map displaying the incoming enemy ships. The tension in the room was palpable, and yet there was something else in Mira's eyes. It was not fear, but determination and unshakable resolve that had grown within her ever since that fateful moment when she had awoken after Ethan gave her his blood. Ethan stood beside her, his presence a constant source of strength. He had been at her side since the beginning, offering advice and support. But now, things had changed. Mira's power, the power that had started to awaken in her after the blood transfusion, was something neither of them could fully control. It had grown stronger with each passing day, and with it, the responsibility she carried grew heavier. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. "Mira," Ethan said, his voice calm but filled with concern. "We've prepared for this. We can do this." Mira nodded slowly, though her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She knew what was at stake. If Aldora fell, the balance of the galaxy could be lost forever. She had spent her life learning how to lead, how to protect her people. But now, her people were counting on her to use this newfound power for more than just defense. They needed a leader who could not only fight, but also unite them. "We can't do this alone," Mira said, her voice strong. "We need the support of every Alderaan. We need them to believe in us." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with admiration. "They already do. They see the power in you. You're the future of Aldora." The door to the war room opened, and General Roland, one of the top commanders in the Alderaan military, stepped in. His face was grim, but he stood tall, ready for battle. "The enemy is within range," General Roland reported. "We have one chance to stop them before they reach the city. Our forces are ready, but we need your leadership, Princess." Mira turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "Prepare the troops. I will lead them. We fight for Aldora." The general nodded, his expression respectful. "At once, Your Highness." As the general left, Mira turned to Ethan. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." The power inside. "It's still so new. I can't let it control me." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't let it control you. You're stronger than you think." Mira took a deep breath, her eyes closing for a moment. She could feel the power within her, the energy that had been growing steadily. It wasn't just physical strength. It was something deeper, something that connected her to everything around her. But that power also scared her. What if she lost control? What if it consumed her? "We'll face this together," Ethan said quietly, reading her thoughts. "You're not alone, Mira." With a final nod, Mira turned and walked toward the war room's exit. She had made her decision. Aldora would not fall, not on her watch. With Ethan by her side, and the strength of her people behind her, she would do whatever it took to protect her world. The battlefield outside was chaotic. The sound of weapons firing echoed through the air as Aldora's forces clashed with Varric's fleet. Mira stood at the front of the battlefield, her armor gleaming in the sunlight. She could feel the energy around her, the air thick with the power she had only begun to understand. As the enemy ships loomed closer, Mira's body hummed with energy. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she had with the world around her. The power surged within her once again, but this time she felt more in control. She reached out with her mind, tapping into the energy of the battlefield, feeling the pulse of every soldier, every ship. She could sense their fear, their determination, their will to fight. The moment Mira opened her eyes, the ground beneath her seemed to tremble. With a swift motion, she raised her hand toward the enemy fleet. A wave of energy shot from her fingers, crashing into the enemy ships like a bolt of lightning. The blast sent shockwaves through the air, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. The enemy forces faltered, their ships struggling to stay in the air. "Mira," Ethan shouted, rushing to her side. "You did it." But Mira wasn't listening. She could feel the power growing, swirling around her like a storm. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had never felt anything like this before. "Princess," General Roland's voice cut through the air. "The enemy is retreating. You force them back." Mira looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She had done it. She had driven the enemy back with a single wave of energy. But as she stood there, she realized something. The power inside her was still growing, and there was no telling how far it would go. Ethan stood beside her, his hand resting on her arm. "You were incredible," Mira turned to him, her face conflicted. "But what happens now? What happens if I lose control?" Ethan looked at her, his expression steady. "We'll face it together. Whatever happens, I'll be by your side." Shh. Then, the sound of enemy reinforcements arrived. A much larger fleet appeared in the distance, their ships glowing red with energy. Myra's heart raced. They had pushed back the first wave. But the real battle was only beginning. "We have to prepare for the next wave," Mira said, her voice firm. "Aldora's future depends on us. I will not let it fall." Ethan nodded, his resolve matching hers. Together, they would fight until the end. The air was thick with smoke and the heavy sound of battle. Aldora's defenses had held, but barely. The enemy fleet was relentless, its numbers growing by the hour. Mira stood at the front of the war room, staring at the holographic map that displayed the approaching enemy forces. She could feel the tension building, the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. This was at the final stand. Aldora's future rested in her hands. Ethan stood beside her, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a look of concern. He could see how much this was affecting her. Mira had always been strong, but now, with her newfound powers, she was carrying more than anyone should. "Mira," Ethan said softly, his voice filled with reassurance. "We've come this far. You've already done the impossible. We'll make it through this." Myra didn't look at him, but her grip on the table tightened. "I don't know if we can, Ethan. The enemy is too strong. We're outnumbered, outgunned in my powers. I still don't understand them fully. I don't know if I can control them when it matters." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady and comforting. "You've already controlled them. You pushed them back. I've seen your strength. Whatever happens next, you don't have to do it alone." Mira took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his for the first time in what felt like hours. His words, simple as they were, gave her a sense of calm. She nodded slowly. "You're right, I'm not alone. We're in this together." At that moment, the doors to the war room opened, and General Roland entered, his face grim but resolute. "Enemy is almost within range. Can't afford to wait any longer, Your Highness." Mira turned to him, her expression hardening. "Prepare the troops. We will fight with everything we have." The general nodded and quickly left to give orders. Mira turned back to the map, her mind racing. She had never wanted this kind of responsibility. She had always been a princess, expected to lead with wisdom and compassion. But now, she had to lead with strength and power. She didn't know what would happen when she tapped into the depths of her abilities. But she knew one thing: Aldora had to survive. As the hours passed, the sky darkened, and the final battle loomed closer. Ethan stood by her side as they both watched the enemy fleet approach. The ships were massive, like dark shadows in the sky. They had come from all corners of the galaxy, drawn by the promise of conquest and power. But they hadn't counted on one thing: the power of Aldora's princess. "We're ready," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Mira nodded, her hand brushing against the energy stone that hung from her neck. It was a symbol of her people's strength, a reminder of the legacy she carried. But now it felt like a burden. The power inside her was waiting, stirring, but it was still too unpredictable. She had already felt its overwhelming force once before, and she wasn't sure if she could control it a second time. The alarm sounded, and the soldiers in the war room scrambled to prepare for the assault. Myra turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with determination. "This is it. We fight now, or we lose everything." Ethan gave her a small, reassuring smile. "We'll win. I believe in you." Mira's heart raced, but she didn't have time to dwell on fear. The future of Aldora depended on this moment. She stepped forward, her voice commanding. "Prepare. For the battle, we fight for Aldora." Outside, the battlefield was chaos. Ships rained down from the sky, landing in the city's outer defenses. The Aldoran soldiers, led by General Roland, clashed with the enemy forces in a deadly struggle for control. Mira, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this would determine the fate of her people, stood at the front, watching as the battle unfolded. "Mira," Ethan called, rushing to her side. "It's time." With a deep breath, Mira closed her eyes and reached deep within herself. She could feel the power stirring, ready to explode. This time she would control it. She had to. She raised her hands, and as if on command, a wave of energy rippled out from her, crashing into the enemy forces. The shockwave sent enemies flying, their ships plummeting from the sky in a fiery blaze. The energy surged through her, powerful and uncontrollable, but Mira focused all her will on guiding it. Ethan stood by her side, watching in awe as Mira unleashed her power. The force of her energy seemed to shift the very air around them, shaking the ground and causing the skies to tremble. The enemy forces faltered, their ships swerving out of control as Mira's power disrupted their systems. But it was not enough. More ships were coming, and Mira knew that she had only moments before the enemy would regroup and strike back harder than ever. "Mira, you have to push further," Ethan shouted. "We need to take them down. All of them." Mira nodded, closing her eyes once more. She reached deeper into herself, tapping into the core of the energy that had been growing within her. The power surged, this time stronger than ever before. She let it flow, not just from her hands but from every part of her. The air crackled with raw energy as she focused all her might on the enemy fleet. The ground shook, and with a roar of thunder, the sky itself seemed to bend in response. A final blast of energy shot from her, tearing through the remaining enemy ships. The impact was so powerful that the very atmosphere seemed to shudder. Ships exploded in midair, their debris falling to the ground in a fiery rain. The remaining forces scattered, retreating in fear. Mira collapsed to her knees, exhausted. The power that had coursed through her was overwhelming, and she felt her strength drain away. Ethan rushed to her side, his arm supporting her as she breathed heavily. "You did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Mira looked at him, her face pale but filled with a sense of accomplishment. "We did it," she corrected softly, her eyes closing as the last remnants of energy faded from her. As the battlefield calmed, General Roland appeared, his face filled with relief and respect. "The enemy is retreating, Your Highness. Aldora is saved." Mira looked out at the sky, her heart still racing from the battle. She had done it. Aldora had been saved, but the cost had been great. She could feel the power within her, but now it felt like a part of her that she had yet to fully understand. "We won," Ethan said, smiling at her. "And together, we'll make sure that Aldora remains free." Mira smiled weakly, grateful for his support. They had survived the final battle, but the journey ahead was far from over. The power inside her was still a mystery, but now, with Ethan by her side, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together.